With a yo-ho-ho, it's Tale of the Toaster. Welcome back to some more thoughts and reviews on Inazuma 11 Ares, the anime. Here we're on episode 4, and we're going to kick things off right away with Rampart Jr High's match against Rampart Jr High. So as we saw in the previous episode, this is mainly a defense-focused team, and we can see them right now just, big and imposing. There's like 4 of them back-to-back, all just blocking the way as Inazuma defenders do, but we've never really had a team that's entirely defense since Argentina in Season 3, so I'm really keen to have a modern day version of the Empire, but at the Football Frontier level, it's not like a national team. We don't know what this team can do other than defend, but we'll be sure to find out, and I'm keen to see what they've got. I mean, their captain is a midfielder, a chap called Sebastian Fortright, so we'll keep an eye out for him. Their sponsor, by the way, I didn't mention in the previous episode, their sponsor, Hecom, is actually based on a real Japanese security company called Secom. So, as we can tell, yeah, all the sponsors are going to be fake, but they're still nice little nods, and it adds that touch of realism. And more importantly, this match adds a touch of realism because we can see how little is going to happen in this first half. So basically, any time that Ryman attempts to go on the attack, they get a message on the wristband from Mr. Yi saying something comical with emojis like, defense only, heart. It really does make me laugh what they've done with the 11 bands and Mr. Yi in general. It's also really good dubbing, not from the voice acting point of view, which obviously is good anyway, but to show that they can actually change the text, even when it's like on a wristband, just like here at an angle as well, that tiny bit of text, they've still turned it into English to say, defense only, heart. And yeah, I love the effort that this dubbing team went through. It's no wonder we never got a dub for the sequel season, Orion, because they had a hard job to do with this series, just to put a series about football, soccer in pretty much only America. It was a weird idea, wasn't it? But yeah, throughout this first half, there are pretty much no shots. Sonny thinks he gets an opportunity. He basically gets tortoise shell patterned. He sees an opportunity and it's not real. What we do see, though, is the first 2 Hisatsu techniques, or special moves, of the match. And they're both from Rampart Jr High themselves. The first one we see is Frankenstun, and this is a defensive move busted out by one of the Rampart guys. I don't know which one it was, but it's really unexpected. We've seen, again, that this team entirely big guys standing in the wall just like everyone else in Inazuma history, but then the defensive move they actually use, Frankenstun, just summons this big Frankenstein's monster and then he just pounds on him, and it's like, what on earth was that? I was expecting something rocky and mountainous like Rampart Jr High would lead you to expect, but Frankenstun was completely out there, and you know what? I'm here for it. Break those traditions, Inazuma, and give us something new, which you did. The other special they went for was Easter Island Header, which was a lot more down to earth. Smash the ground, something's going to emerge out of it. What's it going to be this time? This time it's an Easter Island head. But hey, that's the kind of move I was expecting from Rampart, and even then I still thought it was just going to be some standard clip. To get an Easter Island head, that's cool. I like both of the defensive moves they've shown off so far. And I hope there will be more defensive Hisatsus to come in the Inazuma 11 Ares and Orion series. But the point is, the first half is over, it's 0-0, and you know what? That's football. At the end of the day, sometimes it is just 0-0. The only match I've ever been to in person was at the stadium 10 minutes away from where I was living at the time, and it was a 0-0. I have not seen a goal in person despite seeing a full, real football match from my home team. Thank you for that one, Middlesbrough, against Swansea, I think it was. But yes, so you know what? It's probably not a fun match for the spectators to watch in the real world, but from an Inazuma point of view, it's totally different. You never, or very rarely, see a 0-0. And I appreciate the realism to go with the sponsors and everything else that's been tradition breaking so far. Naturally, though, the Ryman team aren't too pleased about it, so they have to kind of confront Mr. Yi, and Adriano's like, Mr. Yi, what you're doing is the opposite of winning. And somehow, that throwaway line is what suddenly makes Basil the most striker-focused guy on the team who doesn't care for defence at all. He's suddenly like, that's it! And I'm like, what? He then focuses on the word opposite that Adriano uses, and he's like suddenly reminded of Axel Blaze telling him, "Look the other way." And I'm just sat here thinking, all Adriano did was kick off to Mr. Yi about him seemingly not trying to win. What about that changed your mind? I think it's a weird motive, but it's good that Basil's on side anyway. But even if Ryman and even Basil haven't worked out Mr. Yi's strategy, at least Heath Moore and Coach Travis have, because apparently Coach Travis was watching. I'll take any more Coach Travis I can get, while Heath, I mean, he's the tactician's tactician, so fair play. But I haven't worked out the strategy at this point. I'm keen to see what it is. The second half begins, and it's worth pointing out, Cesar certainly brings this in, Ryman do have to win this to stay competitive. You know, they could go for a draw, they'd get a point for it, but they already lost to Polestar Academy, so they pretty much need to win this. And more time passes by. I think another 10 minutes of the game go by with nothing happening, so eventually Rampart Jr High give in and they go on the offense. And apparently Mr. Yi's strategy really was just as basic as wait for the other guys to attack, then we will. It's like competitive Super Smash Bros. Ultimate strategies at its finest. But yep, that was the strategy and it's starting to work. Fair enough, Rampart Jr High do blast through all the forwards and the midfielders with their kind of moving fortress thingy. But suddenly, a certain Mr. Cliff Parker, Jack 2.0 as it were, stands in the way. And, well, I call him Jack 2.0, despite actual Jack 1.0 being on screen as the ambassador for those Rampart guys. Yeah, Cliff is the first member of Ryman, aside from Basil, to do a special move. What do you think it is? It's the wall again. So the move you expected to see from Rampart actually pretty much comes out from Ryman instead. And wow, I mean, it looks good. He opens it up with his little scrubbing animation that he's been doing in the cleaning montages so far, which is a nice little callback. And he will be doing that scrub before every subsequent use of the wall throughout the season. But yeah, I mean, it's fine. I would like Cliff to get his own Hisatsu technique down the line, but at least for now, you know, the wall makes sense as an introductory one. It's familiar ground. We know what we're getting with. But yeah, here's mine. Scrub the wall. But it works. So, you know, Cliff is the first defender to actually have a move, and he does a little long pass to get the ball over to Sunny. But contradiction. So it's nice that they get a long pass to get the flow back into action, because that was the other thing that Mr. Yi got the players to practice, aside from general defending. But also, Cliff didn't participate in the practice. He was one of two guys who didn't actually do the long passing in the football practice, along with Valentin. In fact, he didn't do any football at all. I like the idea that he learned the wall because of the scrubbing, because, you know, that's the connection, and he was cleaning a physical wall, so he became one with the wall and all that. But the long passing, you didn't do that, did you? I guess you could have been watching from time to time, but ignore it, just pretend he learned from someone else. The main thing here, though, is that the long pass was intercepted by Basil right at the other end of the pitch, and he has a little flashback to his communications with Axel. I think it is kind of funny that Basil idolises Axel Blaze so much, because his voice actor, Bryce Papenbrook, I already pointed out that he's the voice of Makoto Naegi from Danganronpa and a couple of Attack on Titan stuff as well. But what's fun to point out from an Inazuma perspective is Axel Blaze in the Inazuma 11 video game, the one released in America with the American voices. A little end card up here to show some of the cutscenes that I've uploaded to my channel. Yeah, Axel Blaze was actually voiced by Bryce Papenbrook in the games. So now to hear Basil Hardy be voiced by the same guy but with a different style, looking up to Axel Blaze, it's a fun little connection. And I do wonder if they did that on purpose, because a lot of the guys from this anime did also participate in that game. Like, here's another example. So Lucian Dodge, to use him as an example again, he's the voice of Heath Moore and Valentin in this show, and say Kibo from Danganronpa. But in the Inazuma video game released in America, he was Aphrodite and Steve Grimm. It's like, this guy can do anything, man. If he can do Hifumi, he can do anything. But the point is, Basil has his little flashback to Axel, and he does score with the Fire Tornado, and we get to see a little bit about how he learned it, so that's fair play. The goalkeeper didn't even do anything to stop it. We're not going to see a special move from him, sadly. So unlike Inazuma to actually let Ryman get the first goal. It's almost always the case. The opponent will score first, and then you've got to make a comeback. But here, yeah, let's just have the lead ourselves for once. I think I like this Mr. Yi guy. He might give us some more unconventional scorelines. Not sure what he's talking about with all this countoir stuff. I think I forgot about that as soon as the episode was over, but at least Aurelia has some cute throwaway lines in response to it. Speaking of throwaway lines, Adriano goes for a shot with this fire lemonade thingy, and as you would expect, it fails. Thanks for that one, Adriano. But then it kickstarts something new. So Rampart Jr High go on the move with a new special move called Wall for One. The name is brilliant. Wall for One really got a giggle out of me. But what is the move itself? Well, I only have one piece of cardboard that I've used as the wall, but you know what? Here's an iPad. So, right, we've got 2 walls here and another 2 there. So there's 4 walls now. Not just 1, but 4. And they're also on the move. So, I mean, that's all there is to it. It's just a wall that's moving. I guess it counts as a midfielding move now because they are obviously charging down the pitch with the big barricading wall and ploughing past the forwards and the midfielders again. But the main thing is the coach uses the word override when he's describing the move Wall for One and says it is an override of the wall. So what does this mean exactly? Well, this was supposed to be the new gimmick as such of the Inazuma 11 Ares games, and I guess it's here in the anime. You just can't really tell, but it is Inazuma 11 tradition to have a new gimmick in every single video game to help make the game feel fresh and kind of sell the concept, as it were. Ares didn't really need a big one because it was the first one that was going to be on home console, and it would have also been the first one to release since 2013, so it didn't need much. But they did come up with a little simple one called Overrides. You know, to give the full timeline, first Inazuma game was the first game. Second game introduced long shot and shot blocking. Third game introduced special tactics. Go 1 introduced fighting spirits, much to my dismay. Chrono Stones expanded on that with Armorphoid fighting spirits and Miximaxes, and then Go Galaxy finally had totems, or souls to use the more well-known name. Then Ares was going to have overrides, which is pretty much a more linear way of saying, you have this move, we're going to turn it into this move that's bigger and better. And obviously we never got to see how this would have worked in game, because unless it's somewhere in Inazuma SD, yeah, it doesn't actually have any representation in the demo or all that. But yeah, we won't say any more about it yet because this is only a very primitive example and we're not going to see that much of it throughout the season anyway. But basically, that's your gimmick. The wall for one. It works out for Rampart for all of about 10 seconds, but then after getting past most of the Ryman guys, cool guy Valentin, I've changed out of his casual clothing now, sorry if we've got to rep the Tale of the Toaster instead, I guess. The point is, Valentin spots a little gap in the wall for one, and so he is the second now to bust out a special move to break through it. Now, the movement here again, wall for one, it's moving forward, but as the players move, it's kind of breaking apart every now and then. There's just a little gap in the corner. So Valentin introduces his special move called Cold Snap. Yeah, was that cool? Cold Snap. Wasn't cool, I'm sorry. However, the move itself is really cool, and I don't try to mean that as an ice pun, but it is this very frosty long pass. And that's awesome because we've never actually had, I'm trying to think about this in the back of my head, but I really don't think we've had just a passing special move in Inazuma 11 before. I mean, we've had stuff like double pass, but it still ends up with the ball back with its original user. But here, this is genuinely, it's like a long shot from the defence, but it's not actually aiming for the goal. It is, at the end of the day, passing to Sonny Ryman. And that's also, again, tying back into the training that the Ryman team were doing with Mr. Yi. Everyone was learning how to long pass, except for Valentin and Cliff. So The two guys who didn't participate in the training are the ones who did the most effective long passes. Adriano does one as well, so I'm glad at least someone who did the training is putting that to use. But the main story here is that Valentin got the idea of the arc for Cold Snap through the way he was cleaning the school windows, and that's a really cool way of doing things. But yeah, again, they probably should have showed him and Cliff at least doing long passes in the little bit of practice they must have done, because otherwise they were the least likely to do the long passing. But there you go, the move Cold Snap itself is really cool, as is Valentin himself. Again, he looks like a bit of a modern day Nathan with the blue hair, the looks that are going to win over the ladies at school. But I'm keen to see more of this guy, and Cold Snap is going to be a big thing for him going forwards. And most importantly, it passes to Sonny Ryman, who gets his first goal of the season with a nice cheeky little volley. And yeah, not only is it Sonny's first goal, it's Ryman's first win, as the final whistle is called, and they have defeated Rampart Jr High, not by a conventional scoreline at all. They won 2-0. And I love how anti-establishment this is for the Inazuma series as a whole. For them to win 2-0 is totally unexpected. You know, like, again, I said it earlier, but Ryman are almost always losing the match before they then make a comeback. There are very few occasions where Ryman actually scores first, but the examples that there are usually pretty early on, like the match against Qatar's Desert Lions in Season 3, for example. Ryman do actually score the first goal in that one. So I thought this was going to be another one of those. They'll either settle for the 1-0, or maybe the wall for 1 will result in those guys getting a goal, so it's 1-1, and then we finish 2-1. That's what I was kind of expecting after the first goal was scored. Really, I did expect Rampart to score first, but here we are. But no, we actually just get a 2-0 outright win from Ryman, where Rampart don't even take a shot, let alone score one. And Ryman ultimately, despite it being a slow-paced match for most of it, they just batter them. It's an outright win at 2-0, and I love that. Inazuma 11 Ares is clearly willing to mix things up quite a lot and give us scores that we weren't expecting, and 2-0, totally, I didn't see that coming at all. Love it though. But that's it for the match, and we're pretty much at the end of the episode. The only last thing we get to talk about is Jack Wallside having a talk with Cliff about the quality of his version of the wall, and they both have a little conversation about how they admire each other. You know, Cliff looks up to Jack as a player because he's the wall user of the original Ryman, and now he's an ambassador, while Jack just thinks that Cliff did a bloody good job on his card. You know, let's say the cardboard is Jack, and now Cliff is the iPad. It was really that good, according to the expert. But ultimately, my main thought here is just that I love what they did with Jack Wallside here. He's a great introductory player for the idea of the football ambassadors, who are going to be going around all these different schools. Pretty much every notable member of Ryman will end up on a different team. I guess Todd counts as a notable player who doesn't get to do it, but gradually we're going to be seeing all these people again. And Jack is a great example. He's a defender, he's a good player for Ryman, but at the end of the day, he's still one of the novelty roles, and certainly you don't see him being that skillful in football, aside from doing his the wall and the mountain special moves. So he's a great example of someone who genuinely could have something to add as an ambassador. He's added on to this defensive team and teaches them how to be even better at defending. Presumably the wall for 1 might have been his idea. But yeah, he's just an example of a good tutoring defender without actually playing on the team himself. You know, if he wasn't injured, then maybe Rampart might have been a little too much for Ryman to deal with. But he's a perfect first ambassador, and it's nice that he has that little chat with Cliff. And I really love the idea of ambassadors in general. We'll just have to see who the next one's going to be. But that's it for the episode as well. I love that we basically had an entire match in one episode, because usually matches will span several. They'll have like the first goal at the end of an otherwise normal episode, and then we'll have 2 or so matches for the rest episodes for the rest of the match. But this pretty much was a full match for a full episode. I really like that, and I'm looking forward to seeing if Ares can do that kind of thing again. So from start to finish, I loved it for the realism of the match, the way it breaks down Inazuma traditions, shows us some cool new special moves, the role of Jack. I loved every single part of it. So thank you, Rampart Jr High. Yeah, if this era of Inazuma needs an Inazuma National with some defenders, clearly there are some good options in Rampart. They are quite impressive in their own right, and maybe the Inazuma National Committee selection people should consider this highly defensive team and their talents for use in the future. Maybe. But I've been Tale of the Toaster in the Tale of the Toaster merch. And I won't say to subscribe because I've done enough shilling out already. Bye!